My marriage to David had lasted for 3 years. In that time, he had showered me with affection, doting on me endlessly. At least, that's what I had thought. One afternoon, by pure chance, I found a contract hidden away in his study safe, an agreement to financially support a younger woman. I was furious. When I confronted him with it after he got home from work, he was surprisingly calm, almost nonchalant. "Didn't your own father cheat?" he said, shrugging. "Your mother put up with it. I'm just having a bit of fun. Why can't you do the same?" In the days that followed, I sold the house and the car he had purchased for me, methodically erasing every piece of the life we'd built. Then, I simply walked away from it all. After our argument about the contract, David didn't come home for 3 full days. I didn't call him. I didn't send messages asking where he was the way I used to. Then, in the early hours of this morning, he finally returned. I hadn't been feeling well and couldn't get to sleep, just tossing and turning in bed. So I was wide awake when he came in. I heard the soft rustle of his clothes from the other side of the room, and I slowly closed my eyes, pretending to be asleep. A moment later, I felt the mattress dip beside me. Before I could even think to react, his warm chest was pressed against my back, his arm wrapping around my waist. My entire body went rigid. The embrace that once brought me such a profound sense of safety and warmth now filled me with a deep, visceral resistance. I shifted my body, trying to pull away from his touch. Out of the quiet, he spoke. "Why are you so cold?" I had just undergone a medical procedure earlier that day, an abortion, and my body was still weak and trying to recover. Of course I'm cold, I thought. I could feel the chill on the back of my own hand. I felt awful. He paused for a moment, then seemed to try and pull me closer. I pushed his hand away and rolled out of the bed, swinging my legs to the floor. Seeing me get up, David looked at me, his voice laced with sudden irritation. "Where are you going?" "To the guest room," I said flatly. My attitude must have angered him because his expression darkened with frustration. "When are you going to grow up?" he said, his voice sharp. "Do you really need to throw a tantrum like a child?" His tone was thick with impatience, as if I were the one being completely unreasonable. The fragile calm I had been holding on to began to crumble, replaced by a sharp, rippling pain. A bitter smile touched my lips. "So in your eyes, I'm the one who's always making a fuss." David's dark, cold eyes stared at me. He pressed his lips into a thin line and said nothing, but his silence was all the confirmation I needed. A cold smirk formed on my face as I looked back at him. "Since we've clearly reached the point where we can't stand the sight of each other, let's just pick a time to go to the courthouse and get a divorce." Hearing the word divorce, the anger in his eyes intensified. He climbed out of bed and strode toward me. "Clara, I already told you," he said through gritted teeth. "She gives me a sense of novelty that you can't. Once this phase passes, I'll end things with her. You're the one who is most important to me." I was stunned by the sheer shamelessness of his words. My eyes widened in disbelief, and I let out a dry, bitter laugh. So this is how he saw women, as cheap commodities to be used and discarded at his convenience. My voice trembled as I asked, "David, do you have any conscience at all?" He seemed to have run out of patience, his look growing more irritated by the second. "You have the nerve to ask me that? We've been married for 4 years. Have I ever treated you badly? Why can't you just look the other way? Why are you the only one who can't accept this?" I gave a sarcastic laugh and asked coldly, "So, by your logic, it would be fine if I went out and found some novelty too? We could just each do our own thing." That clearly provoked him. David's hand shot out and grabbed my wrist, his grip tight. His jaw was clenched in fury. "You dare?" Facing his angry glare, I pulled my lips into a cold smile. "You see, even you can't accept it, so why on earth would you expect me to?" "Let's just get a divorce, David. I don't want to do this anymore." He still refused to agree. After giving me a long, hard look, he slammed the bedroom door and left. I sat down on the edge of the bed, staring at the familiar room, and an overwhelming sadness washed over me. Earlier this year, my father, who had always been held up as a model husband, was caught cheating. The woman he was having an affair with showed up at our family home, heavily pregnant, demanding that my parents get a divorce. She yelled and made a terrible scene, and before long, everyone in our social circle knew. My mother had spent most of her life with my father. There was no way she didn't suspect something was wrong, but she chose to endure it. I had seen them be loving and affectionate, but I had also seen my father raise a hand to my mother to protect his mistress. I almost had a nervous breakdown back then. It was David who stepped in and handled everything. He held me tightly, his voice trembling as he whispered over and over, "I'm here, don't be afraid." From that moment, he became my rock. He gave me an incredible sense of security. No matter where he went, he would always check in, even sending me video calls from dinners with friends just so I wouldn't worry. And yet, it was this same man, this seemingly considerate and perfect husband, who was secretly keeping a younger woman. If I hadn't decided to clean his study that day on a whim, would he have hidden it from me for the rest of my life? My vision blurred, and the sting in my eyes slowly morphed into a dull ache. A sharp pain began to grow in my lower abdomen. I clutched at my stomach, wincing. It hurt so much I could barely stand. From the corner of my eye, I saw my phone on the nightstand. Almost on instinct, I called David. The phone rang once, then twice, before the cold, automated voice informed me the user was unavailable. I clenched my teeth and dialed for an ambulance. The pain was unbearable. Before help even arrived, I passed out. When I woke up again, the sharp, clean scent of disinfectant filled my nostrils. I turned my head and saw David sitting in a chair beside the bed. His face was dark with rage, an anger so palpable it felt like a storm cloud in the room, as if he could strangle me at any moment. When he saw that I was awake, his dark eyes flickered. He clenched his jaw and asked through gritted teeth, "You aborted our child?" Facing his fury, I remained calm. My throat was dry, but I managed to reply with a quiet, "Yes." "What gave you the right to do that?" he growled. "That was my child, too." For the first time, he seemed to genuinely care about the idea of a family. But in our 4 years of marriage, David had never once brought up having children. Even when his parents would pressure me about giving them a grandchild, he would always be the first to step in and say, "We're still young, there's no rush." Because of that, I had always assumed he didn't want kids. I let out a bitter breath and replied flatly, "Because I think your mother was right. Bad traits are hereditary. I don't want my child growing up to be just like his father." David froze, his expression twisting into something ugly. He suddenly turned and kicked the chair beside him with full force. The chair couldn't take the impact and crashed to the ground, the sound echoing loudly in the quiet hospital room. The sudden noise startled me, my heart leaping in my chest. I pressed my dry lips together tightly. David let out a cold, sarcastic laugh, clapping his hands slowly. "Clara, you really are something else." "Maybe I am," I muttered. "I just know I'm tired." I had no energy left to argue with him. I simply closed my eyes. I don't know how much time passed, but the room eventually fell into complete silence. When I opened my eyes again, I was alone. David was gone. After the divorce, my mother ended up with a respectable share of their assets, thanks in large part to the legal help David had provided at the time. She was now traveling the world, enjoying her newfound freedom with the money. In this city, the only person I still had a real connection with was my best friend, Sophie. Once I had rested for a while, I contacted her. If I was going to get a divorce, I had to be decisive. Sophie rushed over to the hospital. She hadn't even sat down before I said, "Sophie, can you do me a favor?" "What is it? And more importantly, why are you in the hospital?" she asked, her face etched with concern. I told her everything that had happened recently, every single detail. After hearing it all, Sophie fell into a long silence. Back when my father had cheated, she had advised me not to tell David, afraid that one day he might use those same wounds against me like a sharp blade. She had been right, but I was too foolish. I trusted him completely, leaned on him for everything. In the end, the very blade I had handed him myself came back and cut me deeply. "It's too late to regret anything now," she said quietly, "but I support your decision. A man whose heart has wandered is like rotten cabbage. You just have to tear it up and throw it away. I let out a weak smile. So I'll have to trouble you for a little while. What trouble? She scoffed. When I bought my apartment, I made sure to save a room just for you. You can move in anytime. That one sentence made me feel completely at ease. After 2 days of resting in the hospital, I returned to the house we had shared. I didn't even take a break. I immediately started going through all of David's things. Just as he had said, he had never treated me poorly in a material sense. The jewelry and clothes he bought me were all from top-tier brands. Every time he went on a business trip, he brought back thoughtfully chosen gifts. As I dug through everything, I realized some of the clothes still had their tags on. I mechanically sorted out all the presents, but then I froze when I came across a thick stack of pink envelopes. Inside each one was a letter, overflowing with David's love for me. There was no doubt that his love had once been genuine and generous. From the moment we started dating, he had been documenting every part of our relationship. These envelopes were the proof. I fought back the surge of memories, picked up the stack of letters, and walked downstairs. "Mrs. Young, can I borrow a lighter?" I asked the housekeeper. She was busy cleaning and didn't seem to know what I was planning, but she still brought one to me. With the envelopes and the lighter in hand, I went out to the flower bed in the yard. That bed was filled with red roses that I had planted myself. In the sunlight, they looked beautiful and vibrant. I took a deep breath, then used the lighter to set the corner of the envelopes on fire. Without a moment's hesitation, I threw them into the flower bed. The flames roared to life, consuming the letters and the beautiful flowers around them. Mrs. Jiang heard the commotion and came running out, her face pale. She slapped her knees in distress. "Ma'am, what are you doing?" "There's no need to keep things that no longer matter," I said, staring coldly at the fire. "Memories or people, if they're in the way, they should be removed." I watched as the once beautiful flower bed was destroyed, but I felt no regret. David knew my mother had endured years of a painful marriage because she was too indecisive to divorce. What he didn't understand was that I was nothing like her. I can't tolerate even a single grain of sand in my eye. After I was finished, I hired a professional cleaning crew to scrub the entire villa from top to bottom, leaving not a single trace of my life behind. Mrs. Jiang tried to talk me out of it, but failed. She then called David to inform him of what I was doing. All he said was a cold, "Let her do whatever she wants. You don't need to update me about her anymore." I was standing right there when he said it. I heard every word loud and clear. It was a good thing I had already made up my mind. His words and actions couldn't hurt me anymore. After that, I packed my things and moved in with Sophie. Meanwhile, David no longer bothered to hide anything. He started bringing his new companion, Isabel, to social events. Events where, in the past, I had always been the one by his side. Because of this sudden change, people began to speculate that something was wrong with our marriage. Every night, Sophie would fill me in on the latest gossip. While she talked, I would be online, negotiating prices with buyers for my designer handbags. She eventually asked, a worried tone in her voice, "Are you really going to sell all the bags and jewelry David gave you?" "What else would I do with them?" I replied flatly. "I can't just walk away from a 4-year marriage with nothing. Since he's unwilling to divorce peacefully, I'll likely have to go through the courts to force it. If things get messy, I might walk away with nothing but the divorce papers. I haven't worked in 4 years. Without any money, how am I supposed to survive?" "You really are clear-headed," Sophie said softly, almost admiringly. "But still, I never expected David to cheat. He used to love you so much." "Love?" I gave a rare, wry smile. "What does love even mean? Life is long. Who can promise to love just one person forever?" For the first time, I felt a strange sense of relief. What happened with my father was the perfect example. He used to love my mother so much, he wouldn't even let her step into the kitchen, couldn't bear to see her tired or in pain. He treated her like a princess. But in the end, he still told her, "You don't give me any emotional value," and said that being at home felt like being a slave without any dignity. That same man who once couldn't bear to raise his voice at her ended up hitting her for the sake of another woman. "Maybe this is just a common flaw in men," I said quietly to Sophie. Deep-rooted and ugly. What broke me the most wasn't even the cheating. It was when David said, "Didn't your dad cheat too?" Your mom tolerated it. I'm just having some fun. Why can't you? My family's trauma should never have been used as an excuse for his moral failure. Hearing that, Sophie nearly exploded. What a piece of trash. He's shameless, and he has the nerve to drag your parents into it. Why doesn't he just drop dead? I just shrugged, unfazed. Thanks to both of them, I've learned something. If you stop caring, you can live a lot more freely. I deleted every way David could contact me, blocked his number, and avoided anything related to him. But I didn't expect the police to show up at Sophie's door one day. Miss Evans, your husband David, filed a missing person report for you, a young female officer said. If you're safe and sound, please go home. He's been looking all over for you. I stood there feeling deeply frustrated. Neighbors started poking their heads out to see what the commotion was about, and soon, countless eyes were staring straight at me. Under all that pressure, I forced a smile and said, I'll go back then. Sorry for the trouble. Great, she replied. We'll give you a ride. So I was forced to return to the house. The man they claimed had been desperately looking for me, David, was now sitting calmly on the sofa, his face cold and expressionless. Beside him was a woman dressed to perfection, his new companion Isabel, the one he had been flaunting publicly. Well, aren't you something, he said with a sneer, running away like a child. I ignored him. My eyes moved from Isabel's face and I replied flatly, You're one to talk, you brought her here. Isabel jumped to her feet the moment I mentioned her. Miss Evans, please don't be upset. I'll leave right away. Whatever is going on between you two has nothing to do with me. I didn't care about her at all, but David threw me an annoyed glance. Then he turned to her and said, It's late. It's not safe for you to go back now. I'll have Mrs. Jiang prepare a guest room. He then called for Mrs. Jiang and told her to get the room ready. He even added, Also, bring her one of Clara's unused pajamas. Mrs. Jiang froze for a moment, her eyes flicking nervously to me. Sir, there's nothing left of ma'am's belongings in the house. David clearly hadn't noticed that yet. His gaze swept across the living room, and when his eyes met mine, they were filled with something complicated. I met his look without fear. Maybe he could see my determination because a flash of irritation crossed his face. Then call Uncle Jiang to drive her home, he muttered. Isabel's expression changed the moment she heard that. She had been acting meek and timid, but now her face held a hint of arrogance. I didn't want to play this game with either of them. I turned to leave, but David quickly stepped forward and grabbed my arm. This is your home. Where do you think you're going? I stared into his eyes and said firmly, This is not my home. He didn't say anything, but his grip tightened. A dull pain spread through my arm and my brows furrowed slightly. After a long pause, he finally let out a deep sigh. Isabel, stop it. I'll have someone drive you back now. Though her face turned pale in an instant, she forced a smile. No need, Mr. Cole. I can go back on my own. She looked like a delicate flower about to collapse, yet trying hard to appear calm. She grabbed her purse and was about to leave. I caught a glimpse of hesitation on her face and pushed David's hand away in disgust. Are you two done being disgusting? David, just because I'm not arguing doesn't mean I accept your behavior. I'm just too tired to waste my breath. If you have even a shred of conscience left, stop trying to gross me out. The only reason I came back with the police was to keep Sophie from being talked about by nosy neighbors. It doesn't mean I've forgiven you. I'm truly sorry, Miss Evans, Isabel said. I know my presence has caused you trouble. I'll leave now. She gave me a deep bow, then turned and ran out of the villa. David's expression shifted slightly and a look of hesitation appeared in his eyes. I lazily lifted my eyelids and said, It's late. A young girl like her going out alone isn't exactly safe. Aren't you going to chase after her? He hesitated for 2 seconds, then lowered his voice and said gently, She's still childish. Don't take her seriously. Let me take her home first. We'll talk when I get back. As he spoke, he grabbed his coat from the sofa and rushed outside. I gave a self-deprecating smile. Just then, Sophie messaged me. How are things on your end? Did David give you any trouble? I paused for 2 seconds before replying, No, but I'm really uncomfortable right now. This villa felt tainted. That faint jasmine fragrance Isabel wore lingered everywhere. If it had been any other scent, maybe I wouldn't have noticed, but jasmine was the one perfume I absolutely hated. Sophie misunderstood my message. Are you seriously feeling sad over that jerk? Don't make me come over there and yell at you. By the way, there's a design school in the US recruiting a special batch of students this year. Are you interested? I'd majored in fashion design in college. Even though I hadn't worked in the past 4 years, I often designed and made clothes in my free time. David had even had a special studio built for me at home so I could create freely. The only shame was that all my designs ended up being appreciated by no one but me. The Cole family didn't like their daughter-in-law making public appearances. Now that I was getting a divorce, I no longer needed to live by anyone else's expectations. Absolutely, I replied. Sign me up. The moment I heard about the program, I didn't hesitate. I submitted my latest sketches to the school as part of the special selection process. I didn't continue staying at Sophie's place. Instead, I booked a room at a hotel near her home. After all, there was nothing left in this city worth my attachment. No people, no memories. There was no reason to buy a new place here. While waiting for the school's decision, I went to consult a lawyer about the divorce. I had planned to file for divorce directly, but the lawyer explained that without proof of an emotional breakdown in the marriage, I couldn't proceed with a lawsuit. The court would only offer mediation. So, it seemed the fastest way to get divorced was still for David to agree to it. I didn't want to see his disgusting face again, so I had the lawyer send him the divorce agreement on my behalf, already signed with my name. As soon as David received it, he exploded with rage. Desperate to reach me, he called nonstop. When he couldn't get through, he went to find Sophie. Where's Clara? Tell her to come out, he demanded, standing outside her door with a stormy expression, eyes locked on the house as if he could see right through the walls. Sophie blocked the entrance, not letting him take a single step forward, her face full of disdain. She's not here. If you're looking for her, try somewhere else. There's no way, he snapped. She has nowhere else to go except here. Inside, I was watching a reality show on my laptop. I could hear everything clearly. I pulled a bitter smile across my lips. He wasn't wrong. The home that once sheltered me was gone. In this entire city, the only person I could count on was Sophie. She let out a cold laugh. Oh, so now you remember that. Did you forget what you promised her on your wedding day? David's face turned stiff, his eyes dark and heavy. This is between me and my wife. It has nothing to do with you. Well, don't forget, Sophie shot back. This is my home, so it has everything to do with me. If you dare trespass, don't blame me for what happens next. Michael, certain I was inside, tried to force his way in. Just then, Sophie's boyfriend arrived. Seeing what was happening, he didn't hesitate. He rushed forward and started throwing punches. Sophie anxiously tried to break them up. Stop it, both of you. Just stop. When she couldn't separate them, she grabbed her phone to call security. Hearing the commotion, I rushed out too, trying to stop the fight, but compared to them, Sophie and I barely had any strength. Fortunately, 2 security guards quickly arrived. They moved in calmly but decisively and pulled the 2 men apart. David had always been athletic and trained regularly, so his blows came fast and hard. Sophie's boyfriend was clearly outmatched, his face bruised and bleeding. David, are you insane? I couldn't hold back anymore and yelled at him. He turned his sharp, furious eyes toward me and growled, If you had come out sooner, would any of this have happened? I let out a bitter laugh. He was always like this, never acknowledging his own faults, always pushing the blame onto others. Don't try to guilt trip me. I'm not going back with you, David. If you had even a shred of decency, you'd just sign the damn divorce papers and stop making everyone sick. Sophie immediately stepped in front of me, shielding me without hesitation, glaring at him with fiery eyes. This needs to be dealt with properly, I said quietly, letting out a deep sigh. I placed a hand on Sophie's shoulder. Take your boyfriend to get his injuries treated first. I'll talk to him. Sophie gave David a cold snort. Fine. But if he tries to lay a finger on you, just shout, and I'll call the police immediately. I gave her a faint smile and turned toward the elevator. I didn't want to stay out there any longer. The noise was attracting the attention of curious neighbors. Their gossip didn't bother me, but this was Sophie's home, the result of her hard work. She didn't deserve to have it polluted by this scene. David stayed silent the entire time until we stepped out of the elevator. Then he said, "My car is parked just outside the complex. Let's go home." I turned to him with a cold stare. "Do you really think we can go back to how things were, David? The moment you cheated, you should have known this day would come." "Clara, I know I was wrong," he pleaded, his expression finally showing traces of vulnerability. "I'm willing to make it up to you, whatever it takes. Just give me another chance." His eyes were filled with caution and desperation. He truly thought that by lowering himself and coaxing me a little, I'd fall for it and go back to being the foolish woman who forgave everything. But unfortunately for him, I wasn't someone who settled for less. "Let me ask you this," I said, my voice steady. "If you throw garbage into a trash can, would you ever reach in and take it back out like nothing happened?" David flinched slightly, his thin lips pressed into a tight line, and something unreadable flickered in his deep, dark eyes. "So, even if I got rid of her, even if I told you I love you and only you still wouldn't forgive me?" he asked, his voice cracking with emotion. For a second, I saw a trace of hesitation in his face. Maybe he really had considered ending things with Isabel, but if he truly meant it, he wouldn't be asking this question. He would show me with his actions. "You know," I said calmly, "what kept me holding onto this marriage for so long was your love. That love was my biggest motivation. But now, I don't feel it anymore. Being with you has become nothing but settling. And you know the type of person I hate the most. Yet you didn't hesitate to become exactly that kind of person. So tell me, what right do you have to ask me to let it go?" "No, I know I was wrong," he said quickly. "Clara, I love you. Please give me a chance. I swear I'll prove it to you." I smiled but didn't reply. I didn't believe a single word he said. And maybe he could sense that because when he got home, he immediately began cleaning the flower bed that I had left in ruins. He said he wanted to replant all the bright blooms himself. Mrs. Jiang even sent me a photo of him slowly picking out bits of trash from the scorched earth by hand. She had also written, "Ma'am, Mr. Cole still loves you. Divorce is a big decision. Please think it through carefully. Don't do something you'll regret." Regret? No. The answer was a firm no. I only knew that if I didn't stand firm this time, I'd be sentencing myself to hell of my own making. I ignored every message David sent me, pretending I hadn't seen a thing. I had already troubled Sophie enough. To avoid David showing up at her place again, I moved back to the hotel. With nothing much to do during those days, I focused on sketching new ideas. I'd always had a dream to open a clothing studio of my own, to build my own independent brand and bring it into the public eye. And now, the opportunity was right in front of me. I wasn't going to let it slip away. I sold a number of my luxury items and saved up a considerable sum, enough to fund my studies abroad. Just as I had finished planning how to use the money, my mom called. She didn't sound tired like before. In fact, her voice was light and cheerful. "Clara, I'm planning to come back next week to visit you. Do you want me to bring anything?" "No need. You don't have to come back," I said suddenly. She paused for a moment, clearly caught off guard. "Clara, did I say something to upset you?" she asked, her voice instantly tense. That's when I realized my tone had been too sharp. "No, it's not that," I replied quickly. I just don't think there's any reason for you to come back right now. David and I are getting divorced, and I don't plan on staying here much longer either." Years of emotional exhaustion from my dad had made my mom cautious, always walking on eggshells, afraid of upsetting people. I chose to divorce without hesitation precisely because I didn't want to repeat her path. I hadn't done anything cruel or unforgivable in this life. I wasn't a bad person. So why shouldn't I deserve happiness? There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then she asked quietly, "Is it because of me and your dad's divorce? Did that affect you too?" "No, don't overthink it," I said. "David and I just aren't compatible. A divorce was bound to happen eventually." She didn't believe me and was about to ask more, so I simply told her the truth about his affair. That left her with no room to argue against my decision. Her voice trembled slightly. Clara, you're braver than I ever was. Her sudden off-topic comment made everything instantly clear. If she'd had the courage back then that I had now, maybe she wouldn't have spent all those years being drained and losing herself. I smiled. It's not too late for you either. You're on vacation, right? Just enjoy it. Once everything's settled with me, you can come visit then. We talked for a while longer before hanging up. Just as I was about to wash up and rest, a notification popped up on my phone. An email sent just 3 minutes ago from overseas. My heart racing, I opened it with trembling hands. The next second, a burst of excited air escaped from my lips. I had been accepted. It was an official admission letter from the school, complete with my enrollment date. I read the email over and over 3 times before it finally sank in. For the first time in a long while, I smiled from my heart and fell asleep that night with joy in my chest. The next afternoon, I had plans with Sophie to get our nails done. When she saw me beaming, she couldn't help but feel happy for me too. You used to hate coming with me to do our nails, she said with a grin. Now you're more enthusiastic than I am. Well, that's because I don't have to live for anyone else's approval anymore, I answered simply. I've always loved looking good, I added, but David's mom didn't like it. To please his family, I had to mold myself into their version of a perfect daughter-in-law. But not anymore. Now I'm just me. No one has the right to tell me who to be. While I was speaking to the nail technician about the design I wanted, I happened to look up and saw her. Isabel. She looked completely drained of life, pale as a ghost, walking aimlessly like a lost soul. Her steps were unsteady, her movements hollow. I frowned slightly and turned away, trying to ignore her, but she'd already seen me. Straightening her posture, she pushed open the door and came in. Her lips, dry and nearly colorless, trembled faintly. Her voice was faint, almost drifting. Miss Evans, can we talk? There was nothing I wanted to talk about with her. I was just about to say no when I caught the pleading look in her eyes. I sighed. Fine, I'll give you 3 minutes. I stood up slowly. Sophie, stay here. I'll be right back. Sophie didn't even try to be polite. She sneered sarcastically. Sure, but keep your distance from her. You don't want to catch something nasty. Isabel's already pale face turned even whiter. She looked like she was trying to smile but couldn't quite manage it. A few minutes later, Isabel and I sat down at a cafe just a short walk from the nail salon. When the waiter came by, I instinctively ordered 2 coffees. She quietly interrupted. Just a glass of warm water for me, please. I can't have coffee right now. I raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. Then she added softly, I just had a miscarriage. I stared at her in shock. David's. She didn't answer directly. Instead, she gave a strange, bitter smile. This is karma, I guess. I sold myself for money and became his hidden mistress. I was naive enough to think that after you 2 fought and he started taking me to public events, it meant he was starting to care about me. She paused, then said with a bitter laugh, but in the end, he crushed that illusion himself. He told me I wasn't even worth a strand of your hair, that I should stop dreaming. Then, a few days ago, I found out I was pregnant. When I went to the hospital, the doctor told me my uterine lining was thin, that I might never be able to carry a child again if I lost this one. Each word left me more stunned than the last. The doctor had said all that, and yet she still went through with the abortion. I couldn't understand what she was thinking. Maybe she noticed the confusion in my eyes because she continued. I was planning to keep the baby and raise it on my own. But once he found out, he said only you could carry his child. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. He personally took me to the hospital and made sure I had the procedure. So now the baby is gone and I nearly lost my life too. I looked at her, my expression unreadable. And what exactly are you trying to tell me with all this? She gave a faint smile. I just wanted to remind you, don't believe a man's lies so easily. I'm leaving, but there will always be another one after me. You're a good person, Miss Evans. Don't let a man ruin you. What makes you think I'm a good person? I asked. Because when most wives find out their husbands are cheating, they immediately go after the other woman. But you didn't. You ignored me completely. You gave me dignity, even when I didn't deserve it. I looked at her calmly. Not confronting you was how I preserved my own dignity. Just as her words faded, David suddenly stormed into the cafe like a thundercloud. Isabel, how dare you come looking for her, he shouted, his voice cold and harsh. Isabel trembled at the sound of his fury, going completely still. She didn't even dare to breathe. Sir, she stammered, her voice barely audible. Her timid expression made me frown. I pressed my fingers against the bridge of my nose and slowly stood up. Is this all you know how to do, David? He looked at me in a panic. Clara, I don't want to hear it. I cut him off, my tone sharp. Let's not waste any more time. Did you come here to sign the divorce papers? His face turned ghostly pale, his jaw clenched. No, I'm not agreeing to a divorce. Don't even think about it. I had expected that. I wasn't surprised anymore, and I didn't care to argue. I picked up my bag and said flatly, then don't bother showing up again until you're ready to sign. With that, I turned and walked away without a second thought. Yesterday, I spoke with my lawyer again. He told me that after 3 years of separation, I could file for divorce with no further conditions. Since David refused to sign now, I would just wait. There was no point wasting my time or my breath on him. With that matter temporarily resolved, I found Sophie again. After finishing up our gorgeous manicures, we went on a shopping spree that evening, completely over the top. I even checked off all the things I once wanted to do but had been forbidden to. Even Sophie couldn't help but sigh. Revenge shopping is truly terrifying. To avoid being found by David again, I switched hotels daily while I was still in the country. Once my visa was approved, I didn't hesitate. I booked a one-way ticket abroad. The day before my flight, Sophie insisted on celebrating my fresh start. She gave me a small charm with a blessing engraved on it. Take this with you, she said. It'll keep you safe and bring you good fortune. And don't forget me when you're gone. I'll be waiting here for the day you come back in triumph. As soon as she finished speaking, she burst into tears. It reminded me of the day I got married. She had cried just as hard back then. Anyone watching might have thought someone had stolen her life savings. I laughed and hugged her. Just wait, I'll come back rich and buy you a mansion. We'll get you into a real dream home. It's a deal, she said through her tears. It's a deal, I echoed. That night, we both slept soundly. Even our dreams were sweet. Tomorrow, a brand new life was waiting for me. The morning of my flight, the sun was bright and I felt refreshed. I sat in the car, gazing out at the sky, filled with hope for the future. Sophie chatted with me now and then as she drove, but then out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a car behind us, with a license plate that looked oddly familiar. My heart skipped a beat. I turned to look, but the car was gone. I shook off the feeling and kept chatting with her. Before long, we arrived. I was in a new country, full of hope, carrying both of our dreams with me. The school had dorms, but I hadn't applied. I was afraid of potential roommate conflicts, so I chose a single apartment near the campus instead. On my first day, I spent hours cleaning the place, which had clearly been unoccupied for a long time. By the time I finally sat down to rest, 2 hours had passed. I collapsed on the couch, exhausted. Then my phone rang. It was a call from Sophie. I picked up, smiling. I just finished cleaning the apartment. I was going to... But she interrupted me, her voice low and serious. Clara, David was in a car accident. I blinked. My lips were dry. I licked them and said calmly, So? I wasn't the one who caused it. What does it have to do with me? But the moment I said that, I suddenly remembered what Isabel had told me, that he'd gotten his karma. So was this accident also karma? They issued a critical condition notice during his surgery, Sophie said quietly. He's in the ICU now. After all, you're still his legal wife. His parents are looking everywhere for you. Are you going to come back? No, I said flatly. It doesn't mean anything anymore. I chose to let go. I'm not going to get tangled up again. That's probably for the best, Sophie said. He got into the accident while trying to find you. If his parents get a hold of you, they're going to blame you for everything. I didn't respond right away. In my heart, I believed that when love was gone, It was time to let go. David had wanted everything, both me and someone else. And in the end, what was the point? Sophie, I said softly, I don't want to hear any more news about him. From the moment I chose divorce, we became strangers. From now on, we go our separate ways. All right, she replied. Just focus on living well over there. Take care of yourself. After chatting for a bit longer, she hung up. Then came a flood of calls from unfamiliar numbers. I picked up one of them. It was David's mother. The moment I answered, she started screaming, accusing me of causing his accident and threatening to send me to prison. Her words were completely irrational. I replied, "Do whatever you want," and hung up. After that, I blocked every unfamiliar number that called. A week later, Sophie called again. David, who had been lying in the ICU, had passed away despite all efforts to save him. He died at 2 a.m. When I received the news, I had just been praised by one of my professors for a design I'd submitted. My heart didn't stir in the slightest. According to his assistant, David had left half of his assets to me before he died. He had even asked the assistant to pass along a message. He said that if he had another chance, he would never have made such a foolish mistake. But what good are those words now? There's no such thing as a second chance in this world. I ended the call, lifted my head, and looked up at the endless sky. I forced a small smile to my lips. As my professor exited the classroom, he glanced at me and said in clumsy, accented English, "It will all pass.